Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Forman, and today we are going to talk about C4 construction. This is a Lost Surfboards round nose fish retro in C4 construction, and basically the material that's in C4 that everybody is interested in is the cork that they use on the deck. And to start from the inside of this board out, so just so we're not overwhelmed with just the cork, this board has a stringerless EPS core, and it has epoxy resin used to laminate it, because you have to use epoxy resin with an EPS core. On the deck of the board, you'll see this carbon reinforcement strip that tapers off at the end, and then you'll also see that same strip on the bottom as well. And what that does is it reinforces the board, makes it more resistant to buckling, and also what it does is it keeps the center flex of the board a little bit stiffer and allows the board to flex more in the nose and the tail. And to prevent a hard point where it ends, they taper it off in the ends on the bottom and on the top. So by having the board be EPS, epoxy construction, and having it be stringerless, you end up having a lighter board, and also quite a bit more bend and release out of the turns, more spring out of the turns. So it makes a really lively board, and for performance-wise, especially if you're in boards where you're trying to generate speed, it makes a very lively, springy board out of the turns, helps you create speed in lackluster conditions. So now that we've covered those materials, let's get to work on what is the cork doing for this board. So the cork has been used in boards before. So if you remember C3 construction had the cork exposed on the deck. And those boards, if you wanted to, you actually never even had to wax the boards. But the cork, the use of the cork, not waxing the cork or not, it was a little bit of a mind melt for most people. So on C4, the cork is on the board. It's a little bit thinner layer cork compared to C3. It's on the full length of the deck of this board. So the cork goes from the tail of the board all the way to the nose. What you're seeing here is just where the board wasn't painted. It's basically like a window to see through the cork, but it is the entire deck of the board is covered in cork, but then fiberglassed over the top of it. So what does that cork do? Does several things. One is that the cork reinforces the deck. If you think about cork, you might think about cork not being that durable. Like if you go to your cork board and put a push pin into it, you're like, wow, that stuff's actually pretty soft, but you're actually going in between the cells of the cork, or you're piercing the cell and going through it. But if you take your hand and you press against a cork board, it's actually pretty stiff and resistant to denting, or if it does dent, it comes back out. So having the whole deck of the board with that really thin layer of cork on it helps reinforce the deck. So it gives the deck more structure inside to prevent it from caving in, but it does it in a way of something that's not stiff. So if you think about some of the older sandwich EPS epoxy boards that had that hard foam called Divinycell, if you think about like the old SurfTech Tough Lights, they were super durable on the deck, but they were also really, really stiff, because that reinforcing structural material inside the board, yes, it was strong, and yes, it prevented dents, but no, it didn't flex. Cork, as you know, by itself is actually pretty flexible and you can bend it, but when you push on it in one area, it's either gonna press and not dent, or it's gonna dent and then push the dent back out. So it really helps reinforce the deck without the board being stiff, like what Divinycell would do in that same application. The other thing that the cork does on the deck of the board is it absorbs vibration. And so that was something that we learned a lot through the use of the C3 boards, was that a lot of the EPS boards, they're light, and they get a rap if it's bumpy or windy, that they become quote unquote chattery. And so what the cork does is it's a really good material to use to dampen the vibration of the board. And so what it makes this board feel like is it makes it feel a lot more like a PU poly board, but at the weight of EPS epoxy. And so when you have that wind ripple or irregularity, or if there's like a current rip going up the face of the wave, the cork absorbs a lot of that vibration, and you actually don't even end up feeling it through your feet. So the easiest way to describe the feeling would be is if you were to run across a concrete parking lot barefoot, and then you come back and put on a really good pair of sandals and then run across it again. Having like just a little bit of a dampening in between you and that surface is what the cork is doing on this board. The C3 and the C4 We're both, you know, prototyped and engineered through Drew Baggett down in Florida. Many of you know him online as like the Inspired Shaper or Old City Epoxies. He's based out of Florida, and Matt Biolas partnered with Drew to put this into production and to put it in the main lineup of the new Lost boards. So currently, this construction is available in production boards with the Round Nose Fish Retro, also with the Crowd Killer, as well as the Puddle Jumper HP, and it can be also custom ordered in any board that Lost makes. But what you're getting with the C4 is you're getting the lightness and the responsiveness and the speed generating capability of a stringerless EPS epoxy board, but with the ability to add more durability to the deck and also absorb those vibrations. And that's again with the cork. And again, reviewing, the cork is the full length of the entire deck of the board. What you're seeing basically is that the opaque paint, they left it off just over here and on the tail patches, so you can see that there is cork on the board, but it does go for the entire length of the deck. Again, it's C4 construction by Lost Surfboards, Mayhem, the Inspired Shaper, and everybody at Lost Surfboards. And it's, again, this is a Round Nose Fish Retro that I'm holding right here. And this is actually the size that I surf, so I think I'm gonna go out and surf it. Thanks for tuning in. If you get any more questions about C4, or ordering one of these boards, you can check us out online, realwatersports.com, or you can give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000. Thanks for tuning in.